Oh, Eleanor, it's a pleasure to be your first guest for 2021 um, on your team of Women in Power for National Women's Commission. I've always been very proud of the work that the Commission has done over so many years and have paid keen attention to quite a few of the videos and awareness campaigns that the Commission has been putting out. So I'm glad to contribute to the conversation.
Thank you very much. And likewise, we're very proud of you. When we were choosing who would be the guest for this session, it was right after the House of Representatives had its first meeting, and I was really proud of you the way you handled yourself. And I had to stop what I was doing to listen to you when you were saying, in my own words, not today. We are going to have honor and dignity in the house, and so I just want to say I'm very proud of the work that you have been doing as well. So
Thank you for that. Thank you.
okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm really interested in your career as a public servant, human rights advocate, and even in politics. Tell us a little bit about the kind of work you have done during your career.
Well, politics, I would say I stumbled into that. And like many women, you find yourself on the supporting bench, whether that bench is the one that you're supporting a relative. In my case, it was my husband at the time who was involved in politics, or if it's just because you're doing it as a general support. A lot of women are referred to as the soldiers of the mass parties. Very few of us are on the actual ballot, and I remain optimistic that will change. We have a municipal elections coming up, so I do hope to see more women on the slates for those elections. But like many Belizeans, I grew up in a family where, in the era of George Price, the Right Honorable George Price, and my parents were avid supporters.
Yeah.
And so you grow up listening to the admiration, listening to the inspiration. And in those days, it was they're going to take their buckets to sit,
That's right.
at Central Park and listen to the great George Price. And then over dinner, we all had our chores. It's a fairly big family, eight siblings, and you had your chores. And when you had to do your chores, and it happened to be around that time when George Price was doing a talk, well, if you're making the supper around that dinner table, that's what the conversation is going to be about. And that's how we got to know a lot about the politics of Belize. My father was a history teacher, and he really instilled in us this sense of nationalism. And as a result, I think it just came to me naturally that I'd be interested in the national issues and the governance issues of Belize. But I would say that I got more directly involved when I was approached by the then leader of the opposition, now the Prime Minister of Belize, Honorable John Briceño, when he had asked if I would consider being a senator for the opposition.
Yeah.
And I took up the position, and it was one that I'm particularly humbled by, because it gave me a very different perspective on what I thought I knew,
Right.
what I thought I knew
Yes.
about governance in Belize, and it gave you a direct, if you will, 101, politics 101. And I also attempted to get involved in electoral politics, as I contested in a convention, actually in this area where the commission is, because I was born and raised in the Albert Division,
Okay, interesting.
not too far from
You're a
here.
Belize City girl.
And Regent Street and Dean Street is my backyard,
Yes,
leading out to Foreshore. And so I lost that convention, but it, again, another really good learning experience for me as a woman,
Right.
in this whole politics. system.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I was asked if I would, if I would be considered take up the post of Speaker of the House, and then it went to the House, they elected, and so here I'm at. So it's been an honor. You know, public service for anyone's country is not to be taken lightly.
Exactly.
And I like to think it's what you bring to the position. Ever so careful that you're building on efforts gone before,
Right.
and it's a constant journey and process of strengthening and improving. And so you play a part in a very long journey of nation building. And so I hope for the time that I am here that I can continue to build and improve for future generations.
Excellent. And your role as a human rights advocate?
So I think that really got more fine-tuned when I was in the Senate. I don't think, you know, it's funny, it's ironic, because I never considered myself to be a human rights activist or a human rights advocate or a politician.
Right.
I certainly didn't make it, oh, this would be my goal or objective in life. But I have to admit, and I've said this before, when I was in the Senate, it's the first time that I specifically had to confront matters of gender inequality. It was at the time when the country was also waiting to see if there would have been a decision by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court on the matter of Section 53. And LGBT rights is something that just isn't necessarily spoken about and advocated for in the Parliament. And I thought, well, if you're going to pay justice to being a parliamentarian, you have to remember the oath that you sign on to. And it's for all Belizeans. And human rights are for all of us. It's not just for some of us. And I took the opportunity of becoming a member of the Parliamentarians for Global Action. It's a global network of parliamentarians across the world. And they work on several themes and programs, and one of them is about LGBT rights and inclusion. It is about gender issues and women equality. And I wanted to really find out from colleagues elsewhere, particularly in the English-speaking Caribbean, how do they address this? Because it's very similar issues we're dealing with. And the concerns and the topics that are perhaps taboo are same. And so I wanted to know, as fellow parliamentarians, how do you bring this to the forefront and lend your voice? And for the time, that 3 years or so that I was in the Senate, my time spent with that network was particularly instructive in terms of language, education, understanding, listening to the stories of so many people, not just in Belize, but across the region, from the LGBT community, of what it is that they go through. Because you tend to see things in one lens or with one lens and don't appreciate that perhaps you take certain things for granted. And in this case, many things are taken for granted when it comes to the LGBT community. And that's where I got my voice. You know, I used the time that I was there to be educated, to reach out and find out, and to appreciate the extent of what needs to be done if we're truly going to stand by the conventions that we sign on to. And so I consider myself an ally, and I hope that change will come in that respect in Belize, where the issue of discrimination and inequality really can be taken on strongly and with a determination.
From all different angles
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And so, as a little girl, what did you want to be when you grow older?
Oh,
Did you think you would be Madam Speaker in
absolutely not.
2021?
No, not in 2021. I mean, the reality is, I am the senator who went against
Yes.
the party's position on a very
Yeah.
fundamental matter. But you know, I have my father is now deceased, but my mother and my father, they were very strong-minded people, and one thing that has stuck with me, and I hope I'm doing the same for my own children, is there's certain things you simply don't, there's a line you don't cross for yourself. And when you can no longer be true to that, it's time that you may want to step aside. And so I was very surprised that I would have been asked or even be considered. But at the same time, I'm very respectful and humbled that I was, because that in itself, I think, signals a change.
Indeed.
Public servants work for Belize,
Exactly.
and it should be country before party. And so I was very, very, like I said, surprised, but also pleased that that was the case, and that merit was seen,
Exactly.
maybe perhaps in my approach. I as a little girl, to answer your question specifically, I did ballet, and I did football, and then my ballet teacher, Mrs. Valdez, said to me once, because I came in with my knees bruised and hands scraped up, and I'll never forget it. She said to me, "You cannot be rough and tough during the day and then come to me in the evening and try to be ever so graceful. Valerie, you're going to have to decide." And I think that was probably between standard 6 entering first form, or standard 6 first form, and between then, because in first form I had tried for the basketball team, and that was the sport. Football was 6th form.
Okay.
First form was basketball, and that's when we had that lovely conversation with Ms. Valdez. And so I chose basketball. And so I did basketball with a lovely team, group of team players, and never thought that this would be where I would end up. I actually thought I was going to go in the sciences, and until I realized what that entailed, dissecting certain animals in the lab, and I decided, okay, that is not for me. I can't even pretend that one away. And so I ended up doing, because I wasn't sure, I said I'll go general. And so I did, geography, history. And at 6th form, SJC 6th form, I think it's now SJC Junior College is the term. I was just fascinated by the idea of marketing. And we had a project in business administration where you had to have your group together, and you had to build a product or come up with a product and convince the class why your product is better and why you should purchase my product.
Right.
And I was sold, because I thought, well, that gets me to promote. It hones your speaking skills.
Right.
It allows you to develop your creativity, but most importantly, it tests your persuasive skills.
Right.
So I thought this was wonderful.
That is your,
And you also had to, quite frankly, learn to deal with other personalities because it had to be a group work, right? And I'm still friends with that group to this day. We're very dear friends. And so I thought, okay, I will probably go into business. And I worked with, I went into tourism, but still politics was knocking, no? In terms of commenting, in terms of playing a role. And I have to say, Miss Mario, there is this statement that has been said time and time again in Belize and by many quarters.
Yeah.
If you want, I'll say it in Creole.
Yes.
If you want change things, put your name on the ballot. I don't subscribe to that. I think there are many roles that Belizeans can play to impact change. One of them, yes, is through electoral politics.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. And I go to look at National Women's Commission as an as a NGO, as a body that you do really good work. There are so many NGOs in Belize that are making a difference in the environment. There are many NGOs like our circle, for example, like Unibam, who has made significant contributions to Belize. And the list goes on. So I say that just because if people are watching, you know, yes, I sit here today in the role of Speaker of the House, but it's not a role I will hold on to.
Exactly.
And it's at some point somebody else will be a Speaker of the House. It doesn't mean that you no longer can contribute.
Exactly.
People have been doing it time and time immemorial. So I wanted to make sure I say that. And also I found out that it's okay not to know what you want to do at a young age. I've learned that, and I'm trying to instill that to my children, that it's okay to take time, you know.
Oh, that's awesome. Those are some wonderful words of wisdom. You talk about maybe volunteerism. People can start their own CBOs, their community-based organization, or join a community or an NGO. You talk about public servants being true to themselves and remember that they're working for the people of Belize, not for politicians, and so they're to do the right thing at all times. You know, and I think those are some powerful key words that you have given to us. So now we'll take a break, and we want to share one of our ads with you, and then we'll come right back.
My lack of action and silence affirms and allows violence in my community to continue. I will not be silent nor stay on the sidelines.
I realize that this is a problem that will never end until all men work to end it. Everyone deserves a safe and loving place to live. I will find ways to work towards ending violence.
I will play a role in creating a cultural and social shift that no longer tolerates violence against women, girls, boys, and other men.
We will take responsibility to re-educate our sons and young men on how sexism, male dominance, and privilege lays the foundation for all forms of abuse against women and girls.
We all have a responsibility, and that's why I will challenge my friends, family, neighbors, and co-workers to end gender-based violence.
I commit
I commit
To
make changes to end violence in my life and
elsewhere.
All right, and we're back. And I just want to remind those listening, those watching, that you can also go into the comment section and ask the Honorable Woods any question that you may want to, or give comments as we go along. And so this segment, we want to talk about career women, and specifically, we want to empower the younger women coming into the career path, whether it's in the public service or in the private sector. How do we help young women to begin their career path. I like that you end off just now in saying that, you know what, you don't have to know what you want to do. It takes time to know, yes, this is the thing that I want to do. I have done clerical work, I have done teaching, counseling. Now I'm at the Women's Commission. So, I was even at statistics. So I did, before, and I loved all those things. I still love the work that I have done. But how do we now clear the path and show and help younger women coming up? How do you create your career path?
I think it's important to identify what you like, because that is probably going to guide you into your first move. And I say first because where you start may not necessarily be where you end up.
Yeah.
But that's always a good starting point. And to be open-minded, not to close off. It's like I like to use references to my children. They're not so young, but I still use references to them. When you look at something like vegetables, and I know I eat it. I don't like it, I won't eat it. But you have to at least try it and let the senses tell you if it's really something you don't like. I'm a strong believer in mentoring, when and where you can, or coaching, because a lot of young girls, and I'll speak to that given the topic that we're on. There's so many of us that have gone through just about everything that you can think of. Just because I'm an older woman doesn't mean I haven't felt that trepidation, that nervousness, or will the interview go well? Will I get this job? What if they ask me this? What if they ask me that? And then when you get the job and you have to deliver on something, did it meet standard, or am I really sure I can do this? We go through that. So I think mentoring and coaching is important. And I was fortunate to do some of that. There were some projects, programs in Belize where I was called upon, either because of being involved in management level at my jobs, to see if I can lend support. And I found that it helped. It's something that I wish I had, especially when you find yourself in a management level where you are maybe the only or among few women in the room. And it helps if you had that support and encouragement along the way. I also find, too, Eleanor, that when I was going to college and junior college in Belize, the options were limited in terms of what area.
Business or general studies.
It's very limited.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's wide, indeed.
And that was quite an eye-opener to me when I went through that parent teacher session there when my son entered sixth form, that the term "the world is yours," it literally is. And even in Belize, you can see it firsthand with the array of options now available.
Indeed.
And that goes both in the vocational as well as the traditional academic setting. And it can only get better. So even more so, I say it's okay if at a young age you don't necessarily know. Some people do.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But we're not all cut the same way.
Indeed.
And so it's okay for you to sample, test, read, try, talk to other people, and then make your mind up a little bit later. That's okay. It's okay to get work experience.
Yeah.
some of those things may help you fine tune and define where your interest lies. So I think that especially 2020 and especially in this type of 2021 with COVID, one of the things that struck me, this is a very difficult time, but this is probably one of the few times that all of Belize is witnessing all of Belize in a sense, because creativity abounds, and you saw it in the ways that people were making a living and coming up with an entrepreneurial activity and giving life and meaning to what it means to be an entrepreneur, and at all levels, young, not so young, older, and so forth. And the variety and creativity of so many things being done in Belize. No, it's not at the level that we'd want because of COVID. But imagine if there is no COVID, the opportunity for growth in that sector. And so a lot of these the cottage industry is back, and it's become and it's back in a very lively, contemporary way, and open to so many people throughout the length and breadth. So I'm excited about that aspect of it.
I am too.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
Indeed, to see so many young people, and like you said, other not so young people opening up all kinds of businesses and putting out their products, and even the marketing and even the look. I'm really proud of them. For doing that. Because a lot of times our young people believe that they have to go and work for somebody, So even sometimes when you talk about entrepreneurship, starting your own business, it could be very, very simple. It's what you love. You choose something that you love, but a lot believe that we have to go and work for somebody. And then they get into these workspaces and they do not function well. How do we encourage young people, young women who believe that they're being bullied and abused on the job? Especially this week on social media, trending with the young lady in Belmopan for her hair. Being told that she needs to straighten her hair because the clientele does not like to see her hair. How do we encourage young women who are being bullied, who are being abused for whatever it may be, whether it's the way you look, the way you dress, or even the work you do? How do we?
I think it's called the saga of the curls or something like that. I saw, and I smiled because in 2021, I cannot believe this is still a thing.
Yeah.
We women, from young girls to now, really have been dealt an injustice, if I can put it that way, where we must subscribe to this or subscribe to that. And it is true, I think, that it comes a lot with the patriarchal society that we've been in, and still are,
right.
To a large extent, to a very large extent. But my message would be that you have to be true to you and your identity. The fact that a few feel uncomfortable, well, they're just going to have to feel uncomfortable. When I speak, I don't speak I don't come to you from a place of disrespect. I don't come to you from a place of I mean harm. But my voice matters. My identity and how I reflect that matters, just as it does for you.
Yeah.
It's about respect.
Indeed.
And when I consider the topic of bullying, it's going to take a while for us to be an environment where that is almost negligible, because it's a behavior that has existed for some time, and it creeps in ever so slightly in things that you don't think conforms to the definition of bullying, or it would contribute. I'm talking language, music that we listen to. I'm talking to descriptions that we give to each other. And if we are not ever so alert and conscious that words matter, they have meaning, then we will continue to battle the issue of bullying. There is a legislation, I know it was passed, I think it was last year. I'm not up to speed on the extent of that legislation in terms of the teeth and if it has been tested. But the days of us, stating that a woman can't wear pants, for example, or if I choose to wear my hair natural, it's taboo. Something is very wrong with that thinking. My daughter is very much into her natural hair. She uses no sort of chemical products. She embraces her thick, natural, curly hair, and I love her for it. And I have to admit that when somebody criticizes any of us, and it's mostly women. It's very rare when I've heard the topic of a man being discriminated against because his hair was a little bit too high. I know there was an incident with a school once, with a young boy going to the school, but that's very rare. It's mostly women. Either we are dressing too sexy, either our afro is just not acceptable, or no, you shouldn't wear that. That's not appropriate. You never hear those when it comes to men. When you've had women in politics, I remember when there was the mayor, I think it was Mayor Zenaida at the time, and a lot of criticisms were about what she wore, how she did her hair, and us women continue to get it. But you never hear it about the male counterparts. And so not just women and men need to rally against it. But us women also need to be a very strong support system. The issue with the curls, obviously, and it's more than curls, it's the fact that she wore her hair naturally, and it's an afro. And that's you don't get any more exemplary of your identity as a black woman or a black person, of which we all should be proud of. And the reason why that became or has become an issue is because, well, colonizers told us differently. So I support the bravery of the young woman, and I'm glad to see so many people voicing their views on it, as has been done in the past when it has occurred in the past. And that is something, Eleanor, that we have to always remember. These things will take time. There will be more instances. And so it's something that you have to remain vigilant. Every NGO that I'm aware of or I've worked with has taught me that. That it's a never ending, it's a rewarding experience, but it's a never ending effort to call it out when it occurs.
Excellent. I love that. Call it out.
You have to call it out.
And it shouldn't just be a one day thing and we forget about it, because these issues, as you said, continue to rise up every now and again on different issues,
on different
attacking somebody because of who they are or whatever. So but so it's very important. Another question I want to ask you, have you ever been afraid of failing?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I'd be human if I didn't. I'll give you the most recent example, being being elected as Speaker of the House. Now, everybody who watches these House meetings, it's, roll up your sleeves and it's gonna be a fight of sorts, right? And you need tough skin and so forth. And it's really not the decor that you say that, oh, I definitely want to be the Speaker of the House because I want to get involved in that. I've never heard I have never heard anyone say, oh, I want to be the Speaker of the House. I've never heard that. It is a job, as my cousin, who is in politics, the former Attorney General and now the lead business senator for the opposition, who was also a Speaker of the House, Honorable Michael Perifeet. When he reminded me that, and I never thought of it this way, but he reminded me that it is really the job, one of the few jobs, that and that of the President of the Senate, that is on display for everybody to see live. And you don't get to call an intermission to go consult. You have to make that decision on refereeing right then and there. And so, like I said, nobody really rallies to say, I want to be that, because it takes a lot. And so when there was the inaugural ceremony and then came the first House meeting, of course I wondered, okay, let's see, how am I going to get through this? It sounds good, Madam Speaker, Speaker of the House. People think that, please, that sounds good. Yes. But it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot. So it takes a lot out of you. So my approach to get over that is I went back to basics, and I said, you just got to be you. Don't try to be somebody else. Just be you, your authentic self. Because your authentic self is all of you and is the best of you. And as long as you're fair, as long as you're respectful, that's all you can ask for. The job of the Speaker of the House, as it relates to House meetings, is to be fair and balanced, not to be partial. You don't support one side over the next. And that was my approach for the tone that I wanted to set. There is no need for me to comment on public policy. That's not the role of the Speaker of the House. My role at those House meetings is to just be that fair, FAIR, but fairless referee. And to make sure that both sides, today it's both sides, maybe one of these days it'll be multiple sides in that house, right? But for now it's both sides, and to make sure that they are treated with respect and fairness. There's another side of the responsibilities of the Speaker of the House that nobody really gets to see that much or know about, but can also maybe lend itself to some nervousness, and that is dealing with the international agencies. A Speaker of the House in Parliament is your, if you will, your ambassador for Parliament. And so that other side is where the Speaker has to engage with other other parliamentary associations as well, to see where opportunities lie, to engage your own parliamentarians and to get them exposed, as well as to give them opportunities for further education in their role as parliamentarians. And so that involves a certain level of outreach outside of Belize. I'm not a trained diplomat, so one might think, okay, is it that you don't fear or have any trepidations? But again, like I said, if you are your authentic self and you're true to what you bring or what you want to see, those fears slowly get alleviated. Another side to the Speaker of the House is the outreach that is done in country to educate Belizeans about the important role of the parliament, of the parliamentary institution, understanding the roles that the executive play against the legislature, for example, and to reach out to particularly our young boys and girls in school, for them to appreciate the governance structure and the system, and for them to understand what's the big deal, right, about Parliament. I would love to see that the Parliament gets more modernized, if I can use that term. And so I hope that I can bring that to it, and by so doing get young people more engaged in this institution, so that as they get older and they think about what do I want to do, maybe be a parliamentarian will be on their list. Not necessarily a politician, but a parliamentarian. And so maybe that will be on their list.
That's great. I have never heard anybody explain the role of the speaker so eloquently like you did, and simplistic so that anybody can understand. We didn't know. We always thought the speaker of the house just goes when it's time for house meeting and
round one, round two, round three.
Exactly. So I'm really happy that you explained that there's so many pieces to the work of the Speaker of the House. We didn't know that.
In the hospitality industry, in the hotel where I worked long time ago, there's front of house and there's back of house. So what you see in house meetings now live stream, that's your front of house. There's a whole next side to it at the back of the house, and it runs with an engine. It's the staff of the assembly, and they are public servants, and they do really a stellar job with limited resources, but they do a stellar job in putting it all together and making what you see at the house meeting, making it possible. And so I hope for the time that I'm there that I get to help in that awareness.
Awesome. And so at this time, we would like to take a break and share another one of our videos with you, and then we come back with the third segment after this.
Ray, what's wrong? It's him. He hit me again. Oh my gosh. This time it was worse. He slammed my face in the wall and threatened to kill me. If you or someone you know is experiencing family violence, call 0800 A Way Out. Or you can text or WhatsApp to 672-9628. This message is brought to you by the National Women's Commission, funding from The Engender and Spotlight Projects. Ray, what's wrong? It's him. He hit me again. Oh my gosh. This time it was worse. He slammed my face in the wall and threatened to kill me. If you or someone you know is experiencing family violence, call 0800 A Way Out. Or you can text or WhatsApp to 672-9628. This message is brought to you by the National Women's Commission, funding from The Engender and Spotlight Projects. Ray, what's wrong? It's him. He hit me again. Oh my gosh. This time it was worse. He slammed my face in the wall and threatened to kill me. If you or someone you know is experiencing family violence, call 0800 A Way Out. Or you can text or WhatsApp to 672-9628. This message is brought to you by the National Women's Commission, funding from The Engender.
Great. And so this segment, we'll talk about challenges and inspiration. And so I want to ask, do you get resistance when you're leading men?
Men and women.
Men and women. I separated them. I was going to ask women afterwards, but that's okay. Yes. So both of them.
Both of them. I mean, listen, let's be frank. It's never easy in a society or system where it has almost always been dominated by men. when you have a woman in a leadership position. Not every, that doesn't come easy to adjust to for some men.
Right.
And I say some because that's not the
Not
case
everybody.
really
Right,
for all.
indeed.
So there has been some challenges there. You know, the terms of being called or described, you're being too emotional.
Yeah.
You're too passionate. You need to calm down. These things are never used. These words are never used when a man in a similar position expresses himself with such vigor and such determination. But it is used in a negative way when it's applied to a woman. So when I've gotten told that, I've gotten told, you know, the forbidden B word. I've been told that I'm too strict, I'm strong, I'm fierce. Why can't I just agree or fall in line? I've been told all of this and this is throughout my career. Now I started very young in a leadership position, in my 20s as management positions and then director of tourism, very young. And I had to work with many men, both here as well as abroad. And the dynamics, I like to think, is what has helped to contribute, obviously, to my experience. I don't regret any of it, but of course it has been a challenge. With time and experience, I have learned how not to respond so quickly, but to take things in, absorb, and you know, the lesson that my mother, or maybe all our mothers, have taught us: think before you talk. And to be, you know, very conscious of that. And so I think I've gotten better at that. With women, I would say that we as a sisterhood, we have still a long way to go in supporting other women. A lot of people don't like to admit that, but it's a fact. When it takes an adjustment, and we have to work with each other to lift each other up, not necessarily bring each other down, to lend a hand, to encourage, and to show that we're not here to compete against each other, but we're here for the benefit of the wider, if you will, sisterhood. There are a lot of issues that plague, and I use the word purposely, plague our women and girls in Belize. And the issues are not singular, if you will, or specific to a woman's so-called issue. Domestic violence is right up there. Discrimination is right up there. Misogyny, sexism, sexual harassment. But in addition to that, poverty, healthcare, land ownership, these things are also women issues.
That's right.
Freedom of choice. They're all women issues. It's not going to disappear. It's going to take a lot of effort to just ever so slowly put a dent. And my hope is that our younger girls coming up will be part of that movement of change.
Indeed. Yeah.
Because they're growing up in a different era. They're growing up in an era where, while the House of Representatives only has 3 women, there are so many other spheres and spaces of leadership that have many women. The glass ceiling of House of Representatives has not yet been broken, but it will. It's coming. You have your Speaker of the House and your President of the Senate, they're women. It's not the first time. I think it's probably the second time that has occurred. You have about 45% when I checked. 45% of the CEOs in the ministries are women.
Yeah, I did some data. Yeah, it's about that.
It's about that, correct?
Yeah.
I'm not off. Look at your judiciary, Madam Chief Justice.
There are more
at the
there
helm.
are 60, I think 60% females in the judiciary.
There you go.
So
You have an Attorney General along with the Madam Chief Justice and the President of the Bar Association. Currently, they're all women. When you look at the NGO field, several, if not the majority, are led by women. Then when you get into your education sector, as which you are very familiar with, Eleanor, you have also dynamic women at various levels of leadership. When we get into tourism, you see it there. You're seeing it more and more in the marine sector as well. Coast Guard comes to mind with a lot of efforts they're doing there. So we are definitely a different Belize from when I was growing up, from when you were growing up. And so it gives me hope for our younger girls and boys to appreciate that this, when we speak about equality and representation of society, we want to make sure that it's not just lip service.
Right.
There's some very difficult ones, I agree, that some cracks that has to be made. House of Representatives is one. I recognize, I see it when I'm at the House meeting. You look out and you see that. But that's not to say it's not coming. I really believe it is. And I encourage our young women to get involved in electoral politics. It's the only way we're going to make the change. You know, yes, there'll be failures along the way, but you know, failures are to be embraced as lessons for you to do better on the second or third go around. So I don't look at it negatively. I also think that there is a lot of room for young girls to explore your non-traditional, if you will, areas in education, and I'm looking forward to see some of that. More engineers, the fire service, the BDF, for example, non-traditional agriculture that comes to mind, and so I'm hoping that by our young girls seeing that this is a different Belize, that yes, that they too can be in a leadership position that was once dominated by men. And that's not to say that it must always be women. Exactly. What I'm getting at is Belize is a population where just about half and half between the gender. And so we should try and reflect that representation as best as we can. I always like to tell people, I will not listen to a man talk to me about my health as a woman in terms of policy, in terms of program. There are certain things, let's face it, that a man will never experience.
Exactly.
And therefore, we need to have that more of that representation, to have a more robust discussion in terms of policy and legislation and future planning. And that's because we're just talking gender. I mean, we could go on into representation in terms of ethnicities.
Exactly.
We can talk about geographical, and of course, as we touched on very briefly, we also have to remember that there is a thriving LGBT community in Belize, and they too need to be around tables. So
That's right.
challenges will exist. as a woman, I have to admit that in my experience to date, and I'll have many more, I'm sure, but to date, it hasn't necessarily been easy. It took me a while to find my voice. Although if you ask my sisters, they'll tell me, no, you've always been like that. But I didn't quite see it that way. And I should say that growing up where you had 7 girls and 1 boy, perhaps the voice was there, because I feel sorry for my brother sometimes. But yeah, we were definitely allowed and given that space, that room, that freedom to speak up and to assert ourselves. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And I have to pass it on.
Indeed.
Because it can be a different belief. But women have to support each other. And our men have to support us, that we're not competing with each other. We're just trying to make the discussion more well-rounded and more balanced.
Yeah, and so basically you have said that going back to basics, back to the value system that is believed would make changes and make things even better for us, and we're not there yet. I think in terms of value and some of the things that you talk about, simple respecting everybody and all the other things, working together, being supportive, we need to get back to those space, and we had that some years ago. So
and during this time with COVID, I am seeing it where working together is helps in communities and in different sectors and spheres, because this is something that we all have to pull through. It's painful, it's difficult, but we are always going to be better if we respect one another. We're always going to be respected as a nation if we adhere to that. And so I hope I can continue to lend my voice in that regard.
So that's great. Who inspires you and why?
It's gonna sound very cliche.
That's okay.
But it's my mother.
Oh, yeah.
My mother is I think she's 83. I say think because I always have to go back and do my math. And her birthday hasn't come up yet, so it's 83. And she was born in St. Paul's Bank. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yes, I do. The River Valley.
Right. And she comes with very strong-willed, very forthright, very strong. If you see her, she's a very thin-bodied woman, but don't let that fool you. My mother worked at the city council. Those days, before it was city council, to tell you how long she worked there, she was like town clerk. It was like when it was town, right? And she was always into accounting. And in those days, it was ledgers, those big,
yes, I remember those big books.
Those big books. And she spent hours. I will never forget. We go to the office. We have to wait for her after school, and she spent hours upon hours just trying to find that cent or that 10 cents or that 20 cents with these big things, right? And she was an asthmatic from the time she was 5 to know. And this professionalism she shared and showed us, the commitment to doing something to the end and to the best of your ability, the grit, and also elegance at the same time.
I like that.
I haven't mastered the sense of humor, and so I still have to work on that. I think I'm a little bit too serious, and I need to lighten up sometimes. But my mother, because of her relationship with her siblings, her own siblings, they have such a sense of humor. And so in one breath, she's stern, disciplinarian, but in another breath, she's a jokester. And I think that's a healthy balance.
Yes.
A very healthy balance. Important. But she raised, both her and my father worked, and they raised 8 children, working 2 jobs. They each working their jobs, sorry. long hours, still took time out to make sure that they had time for all 8, and took us out on, road trips across Belize. My older siblings had the benefit of enjoying more of that, because by the time my twin and I came along, well, let's face it, I think they were just tired. So the trips weren't as many then, but time had already changed. You had access to more buses than you did, and so forth. And so she really is my inspiration. She has her faith, and she holds on to her faith. Has gotten her through a lot of challenges. But I look to try to think of, who do I get my inspiration from? Is it some named person, or it's the most important person, and it's my mother, because she's gone through a lot as a woman, having had 8 children, lost her husband after so many years, and has lived as a widow, and still inspires me. Having gone through that pain, and then having been a career woman, has also taught me a lot on how to approach it. She was one of the first persons after I chatted with my immediate family, my husband and my children, and I went to my mom and I said, well, what do you think about this role as Speaker of the House? She said, well, one thing's for sure. What? They know you. Yeah. They know what you won't tolerate. And she just said to me, whatever you do and for however long you do it, just continue being you, because it's what has gotten you through. And so I go to her for advice still. So she's my inspiration.
Awesome. So she herself is a woman of power. What's her name?
Oh, absolutely. Edith Woods, affectionately known as Nella. But
awesome.
She is my inspiration.
Awesome. Okay, and we take our final break. So we go to a break now, and then we come back to wrap up.
Every day, women and men in Belize become victims of gender-based violence, which results in emotional, sexual, financial, and physical abuse. Are you a survivor of gender-based violence and in imminent danger? Don't be afraid. There are ways you can get help. You can call our free emergency numbers at 0800 A Way Out, or text or WhatsApp 672-9628, or call 911 to make a report at any time of the day or night. A police officer will assist you. You can also contact the Women and Family Support Department for women abuse, or the Department of Human Services for child abuse in your district to discuss options for temporary housing or medium to long-term care and psychosocial support. You can also go directly to the family or magistrate court and obtain a protection order that restrains the abuser from coming in contact with you, or apply for an occupation and tenancy order that orders the abuser to leave the home for the period of time they see fit. Visiting your nearest hospital or polyclinic for medical attention or further referrals is also something you can do. Together, we can end gender-based violence in Belize. We are here to help you. This message is brought to you by the National Women's Commission with funding from the Engender and Spotlight projects, with support from the Department of Youth Services.
And we wanted to make the final question more fun. And so the Honorable Woods, she has her question, and so she will tell me what's her question and give me her answer.
All right, so I picked the question out of the bowl here, and it says, where will I find you on a Saturday morning?
Yes.
Well, it won't only be on Saturdays, but you'll find me walking. I walk for miles, and you'll find me doing some form of exercise. I try to get up. My days are try to get up 4:30, so that because of the curfew, I'm out promptly at 5. And on Saturdays, I try to extend my time walking. I grab my niece, if she's willing to come, and we go. And I explore all over Belize City just walking. And then after that, I get home, and then while I'm walking, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to prepare? Am I going to cook, or do I treat and maybe go buy barbecue?
Something,
For those of us in the house who still eat meat, I'm a vegetarian. Or maybe the clothes that I had put aside to wash Friday, because it was Friday and I just want a break.
Yes.
I said I'll wash it Saturday instead. So yeah, on a Saturday you'll find me at home. But in the morning you will see me walking, and you'll see me walking during the week, because that's what I do early in the morning.
Awesome. Awesome. So you are a well-rounded woman in terms of your health, mind, body, and spirit. You take care of your body by exercising. You're a vegetarian. You eat well.
I'd like to
you
think
read a lot.
I'm treating my body okay. I'd like to think so, but so far I've been working at that, and I'm a naturally outdoorsy person, so I love the jungle more than I love the sea. And if you were to say to me, Eleanor, let's go camping, I'm there. Not everybody likes to do that, but I like doing it, and we've done it with our family, where we go camping for Christmas, or we go into caves and we go explore. We go do trails. I think Belize is blessed beyond words with so much natural beauty.
That's true.
I don't particularly like to go to some of the more well-established places. I like to try and go and explore and go find a little unique spot. So we have this big wall map of Belize. You could get them at Angelos or Stationery House, wherever. And we have it in our house. And sometimes it's just, okay, pick a spot, and where the finger lands, okay, how do you get there? What would you have to do? Okay, you'd have to drive, but how long you have to take? Curfew is at 5. So if we leave at 5, we would get at 10. So I plot it, I literally do that to try and, especially now during COVID, or not every time we can do that. So it is, pick a spot on the map. Well, let's go on Google what we could find out about this place. So I'm just naturally an outdoorsy person, so I use the map as my guide, and figure out where we can go next and what we could do as much as possible. And sometimes that's just in your backyard. You might just land up in your backyard.
Indeed.
Right.
Well, that's a good way to pick your vacation spot, or just your little outing spot. And so I just want to thank you, Honorable Valerie Woods, for being with us this morning, for this rich conversation. I've learned so much, and I hope other people would go through the live and get all this richness, all this wisdom, inspiration that you have provided this morning. So we thank you, and we wish you all the best as Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the other things that you do for your community. We'd like to thank the Government of Belize Press Office, and thank you all for watching. Thank you. Have a good day.
Blessings.